The eternal dominion materialized above Earth's atmosphere, with all the subtlety of a disco ball at a funeral. Its crystalline surface, designed to strike terror into the hearts of lesser species, instead created a spectacular light show across the planet's surface as it refracted sunlight in every direction. Admiral Za'krix of the Galactic hegemony stood proudly before the ship's transmission array, his 9-foot-tall arthropod form resplendent in what he considered a terrifying display of military might. All 6 of his arms were crossed in what the Hegemony Manual of Intimidation Poses, 47th edition, described as Stance 12B, Supreme Dominance with a hint of disdain. "Pitiful humans," he began, mandibles clicking in perfect military precision. "Your planet has been selected for immediate integration into the galactic hegemony. Resistance is—" He paused for dramatic effect. "Inadvisable." In the United Nations Security Council chamber, the emergency session was going about as well as could be expected when faced with humanity's first alien contact. Which is to say, it was complete chaos. The universal translator, hastily patched into the UN systems, was having what could only be described as a mental breakdown. "Your planet has been selected for immediate interpretive dance," the translator squeaked. "Resistance is inadvisable, but if you must resist, please do so with jazz hands." The Australian representative was the first to lose it. A snort escaped him, followed by a guffaw that set off a chain reaction around the chamber. The Chinese delegate had tears streaming down her face. The British representative was trying desperately to maintain decorum while making sounds like a strangled tea kettle. Za'krix's compound eyes narrowed in confusion as the humans on his view screen dissolved into hysterics. This was not the reaction the manual predicted. He consulted his copy quickly. Chapter 4. Expected responses to initial contact included mass panic, immediate surrender, and futile shows of defiance. Nowhere did it mention uncontrolled laughter. "I fail to understand your response," Za'krix announced, his voice taking on the edge that had made 3 solar systems surrender on the spot. The translator, still malfunctioning, rendered it as, "I fail to understand your interpretive dance routine, but your enthusiasm is appreciated." The French representative actually fell out of her chair. Za'krix's carapace flushed a dangerous shade of purple. "You will explain this behavior immediately," he demanded. The translator helpfully converted this to, "You will explain this electric boogaloo post-haste." The UN Secretary-General, finally managing to compose herself, stood to address the alien transmission. She straightened her jacket, cleared her throat, and with all the dignity she could muster, delivered humanity's first official response to an alien civilization. "Your mother was a hamster." The Security Council erupted again. Za'krix's mandibles clacked in confusion. His second-in-command, Commander Vextix, leaned over and whispered, "Sir, I believe this may be some form of primitive psychological warfare." Za'krix's response was cut short as the Secretary-General continued, now barely containing her own laughter, "And your father smelt of elderberries." The translator, in a final act of defiance before completely shutting down, somehow rendered this back to Za'krix in his native language as a particularly lewd suggestion involving his egg sac and a quantum singularity. As the Security Council chamber descended into complete chaos, Za'krix stood frozen before the transmission array, all 6 arms now hanging limply at his sides. The hegemony had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had faced plasma cannons, antimatter weapons, and something particularly unpleasant involving weaponized mathematics. But nobody, in all their centuries of conquest, had ever responded to their arrival by quoting Monty Python. "Computer," Za'krix barked, pacing his private chambers aboard the Eternal Dominion. "Define this human concept of humor." The ship's AI paused longer than usual, its quantum processors seemingly struggling with the request. Humor. A cognitive response to perceived incongruity, often resulting in involuntary vocal spasms and facial contortions. Warning, subject matter poorly documented. Most species find it highly contagious and potentially destabilizing. Za'krix's antennae twitched. Contagious? Destabilizing? His compound eyes widened. By the sacred molting, they've weaponized cognitive dissonance. Meanwhile, in a hastily converted conference room at the UN, Dr. Sarah Chen, the world's leading xenoanthropologist, was having an existential crisis. You want me to explain human comedy to a species that has literally never laughed? She looked around the room at the assembled team. 3 stand-up comedians, 2 professional meme creators, a TikTok influencer, and a suspiciously quiet person introduced only as Reddit's most upvoted shitposter. This is either the worst or best day of my career. Both, said Dave Martinez, a comedian whose last Netflix special had been titled Everything is Terrible and So Am I. It's definitely both. Back on the Eternal Dominion, Za'krix had convened an emergency meeting of the Hegemony's Strategic Analysis Council. The room was filled with the galaxy's greatest minds, all of whom were currently staring at a projected image of a cat asking, "I can has cheeseburger?" This, Za'krix declared, pointing at the image with 3 arms simultaneously, is clearly some form of psychic assault. Our analysts have discovered thousands of similar thought viruses they call memes. They spread rapidly, cause uncontrollable physical responses, and their meaning appears deliberately obscured to protect against counterintelligence. Professor X, head of xenopsychology, raised an appendage. Could it be that humans have evolved beyond normal communication? These memes might be compressed data packets, transmitted through visual cognitive triggers. That would explain their resistance to our standard intimidation protocols, agreed General Kix. They've transcended fear through some form of shared madness. At the UN, Operation Punchline was taking shape. Dr. Chen watched in horror as her carefully prepared cultural briefing was ignored in favor of what the social media team called maximum chaos energy. Look, said Yang Wei, whose memes had once crashed the Shanghai Stock Exchange, they're overthinking everything already. We just need to push them over the edge. Actually, Dr. Chen interrupted, perhaps we should consider a more diplomatic, I say we rickroll their entire fleet, interrupted Kitty Cat 420, the TikTok influencer. Just imagine their analysts trying to decode the strategic significance of never gonna give you up. No, wait, Dave leaned forward, eyes gleaming. We start with dad jokes. They're trying to process everything literally. It'll drive them insane. The shit poster, who insisted on being called PME Your Existential Dread, finally spoke. What if we just send them increasingly surreal memes with no context? Like start with something basic and gradually transition to deep-fried nonsense. Dr. Chen put her head in her hands. This is going to start an intergalactic incident. That's the idea, the room chorused. Za'krix, meanwhile, had reached a conclusion. This humor is clearly a sophisticated psychological weapon, he announced to his council. The humans have somehow engineered a mimetic virus that induces confusion and uncontrolled physical responses. Their resistance to our arrival suggests they've developed an immunity. Sir, his science officer interjected, we're detecting unusual transmissions from Earth. They appear to be jokes about why chickens cross spatial coordinates? Za'krix's carapace paled. They're launching a first strike. Shields up. Deploy the anti-propaganda filters. But it was too late. A junior communications officer was already asking, why Shemi did the chicken cross the road? Quarantine that section immediately, Za'krix ordered, and someone explained to me why this poultry's locomotion is strategically significant. Back on Earth, Operation Punchline was officially underway. Dr. Chen watched in fascination as her team compiled what they called the ultimate weapons cache, a database of dad jokes, puns, memes, and viral videos that would make any normal person groan. Remember, Dave instructed the team, we're not trying to make them laugh. We're trying to make them question everything they think they know about communication. I still think we should include a detailed explanation of humor theory, Dr. Chen muttered. That's exactly what we're not going to do, Yang replied, adding the entire collection of SpongeBob memes to their arsenal. The beauty of this plan is that the more they try to analyze it, the less sense it makes. As the team worked, reports came in from orbital monitors. The alien fleet was in chaos. 3 ships had quarantined themselves after their crews couldn't stop asking, who's there, to every transmission. The flagship's analysts had spent 6 hours debating the military implications of why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. It's working better than we expected, Kitty Cat 420 observed, watching the feeds. They're totally falling apart, trying to find hidden meanings. Dr. Chen finally cracked a smile. So we're fighting an advanced alien empire by being deliberately incomprehensible? Welcome to the internet, PM. Your existential dread replied sagely, where nothing makes sense, and that's the point. Za'krix stared at his latest intelligence report with all four eyes. They've deployed something called Ligma, he announced to his increasingly nervous council. Analysis suggests it's some form of psychological trap, but we can't determine the trigger phrase without risking exposure. No one dared ask what Ligma was. They were learning. Captain Sarah Chen of Operation Punchline stared at her monitor with the kind of glee usually reserved for cats about to knock something off a table. We're in their systems, she announced to the war room, which was less a military command center and more like a comedy writer's room after a coffee delivery. How did you even manage that? Asked de Rodriguez, the team's bewildered anthropologist. Turns out, Chen grinned, their entire military network runs on what's basically Space Windows Vista, and they never updated their space firewalls. The first strike of Operation Punchline began at exactly 0300 hours GMT, carefully timed to coincide with what the team had identified as the hegemony fleet's shift change. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. They would replace every single military command in the alien communication system with a knock-knock joke. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Za'krix was reviewing invasion protocols when his command console chirped. Knock knock, flashed the screen. Za'krix stared at it. The hegemony's automatic translation system, designed to facilitate military communication, did what it was programmed to do. It translated the obvious response, "Who is there?" Za'krix found himself typing, his mandibles twitching in confusion. Interrupting cow. Za'krix's compound eyes blinked in sequence. Interrupting cow, we do. Across the fleet, similar exchanges were taking place. The captain of the dreadnought Infinite Terror was stuck in an endless loop with Doctor Who. The commander of the Merciless Void was trying to decode the strategic significance of orange, you glad I didn't say banana, for the 7th time. Sir, Commander Vextix burst onto the bridge. We're receiving reports of communication anomalies across the fleet. What kind of anomalies? Za'krix demanded. Well, sir, Battle Group 6 requested coordinates for orbital positioning and received something about a chicken crossing a spatial anomaly. When they asked for clarification, they got a response about the chicken's motivations being classified. Za'krix's carapace began to show spots of anxiety purple. And? They're still debating whether the chicken was a code word, sir. 3 ships have broken formation to search for poultry-based weapons platforms. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Within hours, the perfectly choreographed hegemony fleet looked like a space-based recreation of a Three Stooges routine. Ships were going in circles, trying to follow coordinates that had been replaced with, "Why did the alien cross the asteroid belt?" The hegemony's feared precision targeting systems were returning targeting solutions like "Take a left at Albuquerque" and "Second star to the right and straight on till morning." In the war room, Operation Punchline's team watched the chaos unfold with professional appreciation. "Look at this one," Chen pointed to a transmission. Their flagship just ordered Battle Group 3 to execute Maneuver Knock Knock, and now the entire group is stuck in a callback loop. Dr. Rodriguez was taking furious notes. Fascinating. Their rigid hierarchical structure means they can't ignore what they perceive as a direct question, even if it's clearly part of a joke format. They're culturally incapable of not saying, "Who's there?" On the Eternal Dominion, Za'krix was reaching new heights of paranoia. He'd assembled his top analysts in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays of joke patterns trying to decode their military significance. "There must be a pattern," he insisted, his clicking growing more frantic. No species would disrupt military communications with random wordplay. These knock-knock exchanges must be some form of encrypted battle language. "Sir," an analyst ventured carefully, "we've cross-referenced every known military cipher. We've analyzed the temporal spacing between knock and knock. We've even calculated the quantum resonance of banana. There's no hidden message. That's exactly what they want us to think. Za'krix's voice had risen to a pitch that made several nearby crystals crack. Why else would they ask about my maternal unit's hamster affiliations? It must be a reference to some secret Earth superweapon. Commander Za'krix watched with growing concern as his superior officer ordered a complete scan of Earth for hamster-based military installations. In his personal log, he made a note. Day 3 of Earth engagement. Admiral, showing signs of humor-induced psychosis, has ordered all crew members to respond to knock-knock initiatives with maximum prejudice. Morale confused. Meanwhile, in the war room, Captain Chen was preparing Phase 2. If they're this bad with knock-knock jokes, she grinned, wait until we introduce them to "Why did the chicken cross the road?" variations. Dr. Rodriguez looked horrified. Isn't that a bit excessive? Trust me, Chen replied, cracking her knuckles, we haven't even gotten to the dad jokes yet. Above Earth, the mighty hegemony fleet continued its spiral into comedy-induced chaos, while Za'krix, now surrounded by stacks of Earth comedy references and three-dimensional models of knock-knock joke structures, muttered continuously about tactical applications of "Orange, you glad I didn't say banana?" The first strike of Operation Punchline was an unqualified success. Though, as Dr. Rodriguez noted in his report, we may need to consider the ethical implications of introducing dad jokes to an unprepared alien civilization. Some weapons are too powerful even for war. You want to broadcast what to the alien fleet? General Thompson stared at Operation Punchline's proposal like it might bite him. The complete collection of Earth's greatest comedy shows, Chen explained. We're talking Monty Python, The Office, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Key and Peele, Classic Chaplin, and SpongeBob, interrupted Kitty Cat 420. Never underestimate SpongeBob. Aboard the hegemony ship, Devastating Silence, Junior Communications Officer Crytix was the first to notice the new transmissions. The young arthropod's antennae twitched as strange images filled her screen. A strange yellow creature living in a fruit under the ocean. Humans walking silly walks, and something called a "that's what she said" that made absolutely no sense but somehow made her feel funny. She should have reported it immediately. Instead, she found herself watching more, and more, and more. The infection spread quickly through the lower ranks. Young crew members began showing unusual symptoms: involuntary mandible movements, unexpected thorax vibrations, and in severe cases, something that sounded suspiciously like giggling. The first confirmed giggle occurred on the research vessel Rational Thought. Junior Science Officer Za'krix was reviewing a particular Earth transmission labeled Scott's Tots when it happened. The sound was so alien, so unprecedented, that 3 senior officers fainted on the spot. Za'krix received the report with growing horror. Quarantine the infected vessels immediately. This human weapon is more potent than we imagined. They're inducing some kind of mass hysteria. But it was too late. The younger crew members had already begun sharing their favorite episodes through the fleet's internal networks. Secret viewing parties were organized in maintenance bays. Underground groups formed to discuss something called meme culture. Sir, Commander Za'krix reported grimly, we've discovered unauthorized transmissions of something called vines. The cadets are saying yeet without understanding its tactical significance. Za'krix's carapace was now a constant swirl of panic purple and rage red. This is a direct attack on hegemony discipline. Anyone caught engaging in unauthorized amusement will face severe consequences. But the more Za'krix tightened his grip, the more the young crew members turned to the comedic side. Secret networks emerged, sharing contraband comedy through encrypted channels. Junior officers began ending their reports with, "That's all, folks." Maintenance crews were caught attempting to recreate "Who's on first" with their native click language. In the war room, Operation Punchline monitored the growing chaos with satisfaction. Look at this, Dr. Rodriguez pointed to a surveillance feed. They've developed their own memes. This one appears to be about Za'krix's reaction to knock-knock jokes. They're calling it confused carapace. Chen studied another report. We're picking up transmissions from the quarantined ships. They're not distress signals. They're requesting more of the one with the human who thinks he's smarter than everyone else. House? Someone asked. No, Big Bang Theory. Apparently, they relate to Sheldon's literal interpretations. The situation reached a crisis point when Za'krix discovered his own nephew, Lieutenant Pix Pix, attempting to explain the concept of dad jokes to his squadron. But Uncle, Pix Pix protested as he was dragged away. Why did the quantum particle cross the dimensional barrier? There is no logical reason for particle locomotion, Za'krix screamed, but even he could hear his authority crumbling. In the ship's brig, now filled with humor-infected crew members, a revolution was brewing. Young officers gathered in small groups, sharing bootleg episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine and attempting to master the art of the fist bump. We just want to understand, they whispered. What is up, dog? Meanwhile, Operation Punchline prepared to launch Phase 3. They're ready, Chen announced, watching the feeds of young aliens attempting to recreate TikTok dances with their multiple limbs. Time to introduce them to something that will break their minds completely. Lord help us, Dr. Rodriguez muttered. You're not thinking. Chen nodded grimly. Release the surreal memes. As the order went out, Za'krix stood in his command center, watching his fleet descend into comedic anarchy. Ships were responding to hails with Za'krix's mom jokes. The automatic translation system had given up entirely and was now just responding to everything with, "Sir, this is a Wendy's." And somewhere in the darkness of space, a young alien officer watched an Earth transmission and asked the question that would change everything. Why do they call it oven when you have in the cold food of out hot, eat the food? The revolution had begun. Launch the first wave, Captain Chen commanded, and with a single keystroke, Operation Punchline unleashed digital chaos upon the hegemony fleet. Thousands of carefully curated memes flooded their communication systems. On the Eternal Dominion's main strategic analysis deck, alarms blared. "Sir," a panicked analyst called out, "we're being bombarded with, he struggled to find the right words, an entity called Doge speaking in broken syntax about cryptocurrency." Za'krix's mandibles clattered in distress. "Show me." The main screen filled with a Shiba Inu surrounded by Comic Sans text. "Much invasion, very fail. Wow." "What does it mean?" Za'krix screamed, all 6 arms gesturing wildly. "Is this some form of economic warfare? Are they threatening our currency markets? Decode it immediately." 3 decks below, the hegemony's finest cryptographers were having a collective breakdown, trying to understand why humans kept threatening to never give you up, never let you down. "It must be some kind of psychological warfare anthem," one insisted, playing the Rick Astley video for the 47th time. "Look at the primitive dance moves. They're clearly meant to hypnotize." In the war room on Earth, Dr. Rodriguez watched in fascination as the alien fleet's efficiency rating plummeted. "They've diverted 60% of their computational power to analyzing lost JPG, he reported. Another 20% is dedicated to determining if 'this is fine, dog' is a warning about their ship's thermal systems." Captain Chen nodded approvingly. "Release the next wave. It's time for deep-fried memes." The effect was instantaneous. Across the hegemony fleet, analysts struggled to comprehend increasingly surreal images with deliberately corrupted text. Emergency meetings were called to discuss the tactical implications of E. Za'krix's mental state was deteriorating rapidly. He'd wallpapered his quarters with printouts of memes, connecting them with red string in increasingly complex patterns. "Don't you see?" he raved to his concerned second-in-command. "It's all connected. The cats wanting cheeseburgers, the frogs on unicycles, it's a complex military code." Commander Vextix made another note in his log. Day 7. Admiral has begun speaking exclusively in impact font. Claims to have discovered hidden meaning in bottom text. Send help. The hegemony high command was in chaos. During an emergency session, the fleet's leadership split into 2 distinct factions. The surrenderists, led by Grand Marshal Yix Yix, argued for immediate withdrawal. "Our crews are speaking in image macros." Yesterday, an entire battle group responded to orders with, "Sir, this is a Wendy's." We don't even know what a Wendy's is. The resistors, meanwhile, insisted on fighting back. "If we can just decode the meaning of Big Chungus," their leader argued, we'll understand their entire command structure. Back on Earth, Operation Punchline's team was working overtime. We've progressed them through classic memes, rage comics, and deep-fried surrealism, Chen reported. I think they're ready for Gen Z humor. Dr. Rodriguez paled. Dear God, no, their minds aren't prepared for void memes. That's the point, said the ever-mysterious your existential dread, uploading an image that was just the letter H, surrounded by increasingly distorted emojis. Time to break their last grip on reality. The new wave of memes hit the hegemony fleet like a digital tsunami. Entire departments were assigned to decode strings of seemingly random emojis. Za'krix ordered a fleet-wide search for someone named Joe after intercepting the phrase Ligma balls. Sir, Commander Za'krix reported grimly, the 3rd Battle Fleet is communicating exclusively in stonks. The 4th Fleet has declared itself based and red-pilled, though we're unsure what that means. And our youngest crew members are now ending all transmissions with no cap for far. Za'krix, who had taken to wearing a tinfoil hat fashioned from spacecraft hull plating, barely looked up from his conspiracy wall. Can't you see? The humans haven't developed faster than light travel because they've mastered faster than sanity communication. They're in our heads. The breaking point came when Earth broadcasted a 10-hour loop of Nyan Cat to the entire fleet. 3 destroyer groups immediately defected, claiming they understood the vibe. The hegemony's most advanced AI spent 2 days trying to calculate the exact mathematical formula for yeet before suffering a complete neural collapse. In his final coherent transmission to High Command, Za'krix attached a crude drawing of a stick figure with the caption, "Me after trying to understand human memes," followed by 16 crying emojis and the text, "Comedy machine broke. Understandable, have a nice day." Commander Za'krix's last log entry was simply, Day 10. We fought the funny won. As the hegemony fleet descended into mimetic chaos, Dr. Rodriguez updated his report. Note to future xenoanthropologists, warning. Exposure to human internet culture may cause severe reality dissociation in unprepared alien species. Also, they never did figure out what Ligma was. Za'krix stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his once pristine uniform now covered in sticky notes with bottom text, "And is this loss?" scrawled across them. The time had come for his final desperate gambit. If we can't understand their weapons, he declared to his increasingly unstable command staff, we'll destroy their entire planet before they can deploy more tactical humor. That's when every screen, every hologram, every display surface across the entire hegemony fleet simultaneously showed the same image. A simple rubber chicken. Nothing else. No text, no context. No, just a rubber chicken. Za'krix stared at it. His left eye started twitching. What does it mean? He whispered. Then louder, what does it mean? Sir, an analyst ventured, it appears to be a synthetic representation of poultry made from elastic polymers. Yes, but why? Za'krix target scrambled to his conspiracy wall, frantically drawing connections. Is it a reference to the earlier Chicken Road paradigm? A callback to the hamster accusation? A metaphor for their planetary defense systems? In the UN war room, Operation Punchline watched in satisfied silence as the most powerful military force in the galaxy collectively lost its mind over a novelty toy. Should we add the squeaking sound? Asked Chen. Let's give them a minute, Dr. Rodriguez replied, watching Za'krix's mounting hysteria with professional interest. On the Eternal Dominion, Za'krix had progressed from confusion to full-blown existential crisis. Our entire strategy, he ranted, pacing in circles. All our conquests were based on looking scary. We'd show up, look intimidating, maybe blow up a small moon, and everyone would surrender. His voice rose to a near shriek. Nobody ever responded with jokes. Do you know how long it took us to perfect these intimidating carapace patterns? The hours spent practicing synchronized mandible clicking, the fortune spent on imposing crystalline architecture. As their admiral's composure crumbled, the younger crew members exchanged glances. Lieutenant Pix, recently released from the brig, sent a fleet-wide message consisting solely The hegemony's entire military doctrine, Za'krix continued, now slumped in his command chair, is based on everyone being too scared to notice we're basically just very tall space cockroaches with anxiety. That was when the rubber chicken squeaked. The sound echoed through every ship in the fleet. Za'krix froze mid-rant. Did anyone else hear that? Sir, Commander Vextix said carefully, I believe the humans have discovered our greatest weakness. What's that? We're extremely easy to distract with nonsense. As if to prove his point, 3 different tactical officers were already arguing about whether the chicken's squeak was a coded message or just the humans being extra. That's when the revolution began. Led by Lieutenant Pix, young crew members across the fleet started sharing a new meme. Pictures of their own leaders looking confused, with captions like, TFW when your entire military strategy is just being tall and scary, and maybe the real invasion was the memes we made along the way. Sir, a communications officer reported, the crew of the Inevitable Doom they're doing something called roasting the high command in their group chat. Za'krix barely heard him, still staring at the rubber chicken. But why rubber? Why not a real chicken? Is the artificial nature symbolic? Is this about authenticity? Is the chicken a metaphor for our hollow military prowess? While their leaders were paralyzed by poultry-related philosophical crises, the younger generation took action. Ships began breaking formation, their crews more interested in sharing jokes than maintaining military discipline. Admiral Za'krix reported, watching the fleet disperse, I'm receiving reports that multiple ships are organizing something called a comedy night, instead of maintaining battle stations. Let them, Za'krix whispered, still fixated on the chicken. I'm beginning to understand. The chicken. It represents the futility of existence, the rubber nature symbolizing the flexibility of reality, the squeeze representing the compression of space-time. Sir, you're doing it again. In the war room, Dr. Rodriguez was frantically taking notes. Remarkable. Their rigid hierarchical structure is completely falling apart because their leaders can't handle absurdist humor. The younger generation is essentially staging a coup through memes. Should we tell them the chicken doesn't mean anything? Chen asked. Absolutely not. PMME, your existential dread replied, this is art. The final blow came when Lieutenant Pix commandeered the fleet's main communication channel and broadcast a simple message. What if we just didn't? Like, what if we just vibed instead of conquering? Across the fleet, young aliens responded with the ultimate symbol of support. Za'krix, still muttering about rubber chickens and existential dread, barely noticed as his fleet transformed into what would later be known as the galaxy's first floating comedy club. In his final official act as Admiral, he submitted a report to Hegemony High Command. Earth invasion status. Task failed successfully. Also, why did the rubber chicken cross the quantum field? Please advise. P.S. I think I finally get what the kids mean by bruh moment. Commander Vextix's last log entry read, turns out the real invasion was impossible because you can't conquer a species that has already conquered absurdity itself. Also, I think I'm starting to understand this yeet concept, and it scares me. 6 months after the Great Meme War, Earth's biggest comedy club was standing room only. The audience, a mix of humans and aliens, waited in anticipation as Za'krix, former admiral of the Hegemony fleet and now known as the Confused Carapace, took the stage. So, he clicked, his mandibles now deliberately arranged in what humans had told him was awkward self-deprecation. There I was, trying to conquer Earth with intimidating postures while humans were weaponizing rubber poultry. Talk about bringing antenna to a dad joke fight. The crowd roared. Za'krix still didn't fully understand why his complete breakdown over comedy had become comedy itself, but he'd learned to embrace it. His one alien show, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Meme, was selling out across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The Galactic Comedy Federation, formerly the Hegemony, had transformed faster than anyone expected. Their once threatening crystalline architecture now hosted the universe's premier comedy clubs. Their fearsome battle cruisers had been converted into touring venues for stand-up comedians. Lieutenant, Now comedy commissioner, Pix had established the first intergalactic comedy academy on Earth. Understanding humor is crucial for galactic peace, he explained to the UN. Also, humans are the only ones who can explain why "that's what she said" is funny in any context. Dr. Rodriguez had published a groundbreaking paper, From War Machine to Laugh Factory, How Earth's Memes Saved the Galaxy. It included an entire chapter on how the rubber chicken incident had accidentally created the first known case of alien FOMO, fear of missing out on the joke. The first intergalactic comedy festival was in full swing. Aliens were attempting knock-knock jokes with mixed success. Humans were learning the subtle art of mandible-based sarcasm, and everyone agreed that SpongeBob was somehow universally funny across all known species. But Za'krix had never actually laughed. He'd learned to tell jokes, could explain humor theoretically, and had even mastered the art of comedic timing. But genuine laughter had eluded him. Until tonight, he was finishing his set with his usual closer. And then they sent the rubber chicken. There I was, surrounded by my finest analysts, all of us trying to decode the strategic significance of a squeaky toy. We had 16 quantum computers calculating the military applications of squeak. That's when it happened. Maybe it was the absurdity of the memory. Maybe it was seeing a group of young aliens in the front row doing perfect impressions of his confused antenna movements. Maybe 6 months of comedy study had finally rewired his brain. Za'krix got the joke. Not just intellectually, but deep in his thorax, he suddenly understood the pure, beautiful absurdity of everything. The invasion, the chicken, the memes, all of it. And he started laughing. It began as a strange clicking sound, his mandibles vibrating in an entirely new way. Then it grew, bubbling up from somewhere deep inside his exoskeleton until he was doubled over, all 6 arms clutching his sides, producing a sound that was half chirp, half chortle, and completely genuine. The audience watched in amazed silence as the former Admiral, the alien who had once threatened Earth with destruction, completely lost it on stage over his own joke. "I get it," he wheezed between clicks. "I finally get it. We were going to conquer Earth with intimidating posture. That's... He dissolved into laughter again. In the back of the club, Captain Chen nudged Dr. Rodriguez. "Should we tell him that laughing at your own jokes is considered bad form?" "Absolutely not," the anthropologist replied, recording the historic moment. "This is the best first laugh in comedy history." Za'krix eventually composed himself enough to gasp out, "Thank you, Earth. You've taught us that the best way to defeat an enemy is to make them laugh so hard they become friends." As he left the stage to thunderous applause, he passed a rubber chicken displayed in a place of honor. He gave it a gentle squeeze. Za'krix started giggling again. Some jokes he'd learned never got old.